In this lesson, I want to make sure you can see whole steps clearly on the piano keyboard, because then once we've got half steps and whole steps, that's really all we need to recreate all 7 harmonic environments of the major scale in all 12 keys. So that's when we can start using the jam tracks and improvising and doing a lot of other fun stuff. So the way I'll have you practice this is to first build on what you saw in the last video on the chromatic scale moving across the piano keyboard by half steps. If you remember, we saw that that's based on the alternating sequence between your middle finger and your thumb primarily, except when you need to use your index to roll through these valleys where you've got the 2 white keys together. Before you learn a fingering for the whole tone scale, which I will show you in a moment, I think it's first a good idea to go through this exercise using the half steps, but using that chromatic scale to see very, very clearly all the whole steps along the way. So in other words, we're going to connect those whole step notes together using the half step in the middle. For example, if I start on this note here, G flat, what I really want to see is when I move up 2 successive half steps, what is that distance? I want to see this whole region here very, very clearly. And I mean, it might sound, it might sound silly because it's so obvious what's going on in there, but you wouldn't believe the quantity of musicians I've worked with who can play scales up and down on their instrument, and yet you put them in a very simple situation like, okay, you're on this note, please move down a minor third or go up a major third or whatever. They can't do it because they've rehearsed this sequence of actions to play scales and arpeggios up and down on their instrument, but they've never taken the time to really calmly just be in one place on their instrument and look to the left and look to the right and see where these neighbor notes are. And it's not something you have to practice every day. Maybe just once in your life. Just take 2 minutes just today and make sure you can go through the chromatic scale and use it to connect all the notes together, but see those whole steps along the way. So for example, from G flat, I'll move through G and go up to A flat. So that's a whole step. Here's another one, moving up through A to B flat. That's a whole step. Now going across this valley here, this is where it gets more interesting. From B flat to C, that's a whole step. C, B, B flat, B flat, B, C. Just make sure you can see that. Make sure you can see the whole step across this little stretch here. And then of course going from this white key to the next one, C, C sharp, D, up to E, and now across this valley here, E, F, F sharp. Right? And you can do the same with your left hand. Let's start on this note now. Make sure you can see that whole step across these, especially in these regions where things are a little bit more irregular. As soon as you got that, then a fun way to practice this is with the proper fingering for the whole tone scale, which, like all piano fingerings, is just whatever turns out to be most ergonomic and most efficient for your hands. There are only 2 whole tone scales because each one contains 6 of the notes in the octave. There are only 12 half steps in the octave. So we have 2 different ways of doing this. If we start on this note here, D flat, basically wherever you have the 2 black keys together, you're going to use your 2 strongest fingers. You're not going to use your thumb. We try to keep the thumb, since the thumb is naturally down lower, we'll use the thumb for the white keys. But where you have the 2 notes together, you'll use these 2 fingers. That puts the thumb here, right? That's my whole step that I just learned to see from E flat up to F. And now, whole step to the next white key here, I'll use my index. Whole step up to the next white key here, I'll use my middle. And now I'm going to pivot again with my thumb, because that sets me up to do these 2 again in the next octave. And that's it. That's the whole fingering. I've already done all 6 notes. D flat and E flat will be with index and middle. Then I put my thumb here, and then index and middle. This is a super comfortable scale fingering because if you notice, what you're doing is just index, middle, thumb, index, middle, thumb, index, middle, thumb, index, middle, thumb. So you're always just doing thumb, index, middle, very simple. The other whole tone scale the logic there is if we were to start on these black keys here where we have the 3 of them, again, we'll use our strongest fingers, our index, middle, and ring. That puts my thumb here on E. So I've got E, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp. Now I'll pivot. I'll play my thumb here on the C. But I really only have enough room to play one note here with my index, and I have to get back on the E with my thumb again so I can get my fingers up here to do the next black keys. So this is a slightly, it's a more maybe unbalanced fingering, right? Because there's a section of the scale that you'll do with 4 fingers on your right hand. The thumb, index, middle, and ring. And then here we just go very quickly, thumb, index, thumb. Thumb, index, thumb. Now we'll go ring finger, middle, index, thumb, index, thumb, ring finger, middle finger, index. And again, just like I told you in the last lesson, regardless of how far you take this, it's the exact same fingering in the left hand. It's just a mirror image. You can practice the fingering of the whole tone scale in these 2 different scales, right? Whether you're starting on C or C sharp, let's say. You can practice it with your right hand, you can practice it with your left hand, you can practice both hands together. And regardless of whether you take it to that step of practicing with both hands together, it's really okay. Because the one thing you're guaranteed to have gotten from this process that you've probably already gotten even just from this video, and you'll definitely get it if you sit with this quietly for a couple minutes on your own, what you'll definitely get is that understanding of what the whole step looks like between any 2 keys on your piano keyboard. And that's really what we had to get from this lesson. And the next lesson, we'll start building tonality on the piano keyboard, and that means the major scale and all 7 harmonic environments in whatever key you want.